Welcome, people. It is I, Krubus136. I'm a little early today because I see there's a patch. It shouldn't take me terribly long. The patch is not crazy long. It's long, but it's nothing like the bigger patches are. So today we have 7.37c. I read the patch in full. I normally don't. I did. Couldn't help myself. Came out last night. So I'm a little behind time here. So when you get into it, we have a couple item changes. One neutral creep change, which is really minor, and then all hero changes. So we have our first item, Gleipnir, right? The health bonus was decreased from 350 to 300, which does decrease this item's ability to be as meaningful, because obviously that means that, excuse me, the person holding it isn't quite as tanky. That is a big loss, though not crazy. And the Eternal Change damage, which is basically when you activate it and it shoots at people, it deals damage and, roots them, right? The damage that it deals got reduced by 15, which, since you can hit quite a few targets with it, it's 15 each. I don't think the chains damage is going to matter tremendously, except when you're talking about a creep wave. When you're talking about a creep wave, it might matter a little more, because obviously a creep wave is more likely to have meaning for killing the creeps quickly, right? Wave clear. Other than that, I fail to see this being super meaningful. I would have loved to see a little bit of a nerf to the attack speed myself, maybe the intelligence, and a small cooldown nerf, but, we're going in the right direction with this item, so I'm okay with this, right? Right direction. Guardian Greaves, I knew this was going to happen, by the way. I knew they were going to hit either something between Greaves, Crimson, and Pipe. And they did attack Greaves. The health restore is now 25 less. This does matter because every single hero on your team within range is going to get a heal, and now it's just less heal. It's probably needed because these teamfight-esque items are just too strong, so good. Holy Locket's heal amp decreased by 5%. So obviously Holy Locket's main thing is that it's basically a wand that auto-recharges, in addition to the fact that any healing that you provide, which includes healing on yourself or others, is amplified. This item is bought on people like Dazzle, sometimes Necro, rarely, Omni Knight, heroes like that. Now, I don't see it picked up a whole lot because of its niche pick, Oracle sometimes, but the fact that they nerfed to 5% actually really does matter. It's going to make those heroes a lot less tanky themselves, let alone what they're going to do for other people as well. So I think this is a very nice change. Mechanism also got the same nerf, basically, a 25 health nerf. So obviously the difference between them is the same difference, meaning that, it was 75 higher, it's still 75 higher, so it's not like it changed the difference between, upgrading them, but the base numbers went down for both Guardian Greaves and Mech by 25 a pop. So it just has the exact same change as Guardian Greaves. Pipe got nerfed too by 25 barrier. That's the active. Obviously a nerf. I believe this also is very sad for a different reason. Right now, people are buying Eternal Shroud more often than they're buying Pipe. Eternal Shroud, depending on the amount of magical damage that you did, Pipe ends up being better. If you would take an enormous amount of magic damage, a small amount of magic damage, Pipe is always better. There is a threshold where that damage flips over, and then Eternal Shroud is better, right? Now, Pipe also hits everybody, so that's a factor too, and we're going to ignore that for a second. But we already talked about this math before if you watch my channel. I've talked about it live as well as, that translates to YouTube videos. Basically, there's a flip over point at some point where obviously the Eternal Shroud will always be better. If you're taking, let's just say 8 million damage, it would kill you no matter what. But Eternal Shroud would block more of it because its magic resistance is higher if you have the stacks. So because of that, technically speaking, eventually Eternal Shroud will always take over, no matter what. However, Pipe hits everybody, and on the short end of magic, if you're just going to take, I'm going to give an example, somewhere around 600, 700 or less, it's probably better to have a Pipe. This 25 nerf actually lowers that number by 25, meaning that Eternal Shroud will get stronger 25 earlier. And that's very sad, because I really want people to start buying Pipe more, and it's harder and harder to negotiate that being true. Rod of Atos got the same health nerf as Gleipnir, so this isn't surprising to me. Solar Crest, the Shine, which is the active on your ally, the bonus armor decreased by 2. So basically when you do Shine, you grant them armor, attack speed, movement speed, and a damage barrier. So it didn't grant armor on yourself anyway if you use it on yourself. That doesn't matter. So it's only for an ally that you're using it on. But reducing the armor by 2 is actually a tremendous nerf, right? Tremendous nerf. It's probably needed because this item is very good, but still all the same, it's sad because it's worse now, right? Neutral creep, the only change is that the Harpy Stormcrafter, which does chain lightning to clear creep waves and stuff, got a little bit more expensive by 10. That basically only matters because when you're talking about Chen or Enchantress or Helm of the Dom or anything else, taking a creep, they don't want you to be able to clear waves quite as easily or farm quite as easily. So they just made it harder because now you have to actually give mana to the Harpy or wait longer until it's going to be available again. Minor change though. This is just the nerf to like easy flash farming in that context. So it's a passive nerf to those heroes. Items overall, it's just going to be a less tanky kind of game, right? Less survivable type of game, as well as not necessarily quite as strong on this particular item or solar as well. So I like these changes. I think they're going in the right direction. All right, heroes. AA, big change here. So, Ice Blast. It is, you know, everybody knows it, right? It hits you. It makes you not able to be healed for its duration. It only lasted 10 seconds. The reason why this matters is because increasing its duration does not increase damage, because now it gives Death Rhyme stacks, so it has nothing to do with that. What it does matter is the longer that you're frostbitten, the longer you can't heal. And they've increased the duration by 2 seconds as you scale up anyway, like at level, you know, at level 11 and level 18. Yeah. Right, that's crazy. I don't know why that doesn't sound right to me. You get your first ult at level 6, and you get your second ult at level 11, right? And then it's 18. Unless it's 12. Why am I not able to know this? I don't know why this is. It's 6, 12, 18. Maybe I'm crazy. Which would make sense because it's every 6 levels. I don't know why that 12 is throwing me off. I know they've changed it way back in the day, a year or two ago, but 6, that's obvious. Yeah, it's 12, okay. 6, 12, 18, okay, good. Yeah, sorry guys, I don't know, I just had a moment there. So at 6, 12, and 18, obviously, is upgrades. So it's really nice for AA. It just means that longer duration is going to make the team fight unplayable for the enemies. This is counterpick to heroes who pick a lot of lifesteal like a Satanic. AM. So, one regular buff, which is the cooldown of Blink, is better earlier. It still scales to be the same, but it has a healthier progression early. And in fact, at the first level, it's a 1.5 second reduction on cooldown, which is a pretty big deal. It's a good buff. Also, we have the Mage Bane's Mirror, which is the facet I don't take usually. The spell amp of a spell that hits Anti-Mage, and he reflects back on both his and the ally spell, which is what you get when you get Shard. Both increase by 10% on spell amp, meaning you'll do more damage when you reflect that shit back at people. That's minor, but it's a nice little buff to this facet. It does make it a little bit more tantalizing for certain matchups. So it's just nice to give options, right? They're minor buffs, but I'll take them. Arc Warden only changes a base damage increase of 2. I hate it because I hate Arc Warden. He's on my ban list, as you guys have seen before. So fuck Arc Warden. Bane. The cast range of Nightmare now starts higher and is higher consistently. Basically what they did is they increased it by 50 cast range at all levels. That's all it is. That's the change. That's really nice because Nightmare's cast range was already okay, but now it's great. Like that 50 at the start, very helpful. Let alone the end of 50 is very helpful. It makes Bane just a better hero. Dawnbreaker. Base health regen was increased by 0.25. So this change is very minor. It just means that Dawnbreaker has a little bit of an easier time in lane. It means that Dawnbreaker might actually be able to sustain in lane a little bit better. I guess that's one of her problems, is that she can be harassed kind of easily. I still think she's a decent hero in lane, but making her better, it's fine. I don't think she's that annoying either, so it's okay. Death Prophet, which is Morning Ritual, which I don't even know what it does. You delay a percentage of incoming damage, taking the damage in even intervals over a short duration. So it delays it by 5 seconds, basically. So the amount of damage it's delaying got decreased, so it's a nerf. 5% nerf, so not as much damage is delayed. She has to take 5 more damage instantly that she wouldn't have had to before. That's basically what that means. Because before, at 50% here at like the max level, if she takes 1,000 damage, she takes 500, and then the other 500 gets delayed for a little while. Now, because of the nerf, 1,000 damage, she only gets to negate 450. She has to take 550 immediately, and it is a weakness. It matters, right? Because it means she could die easier. So it's a nerf to that for sure. Devil's Bargain, I believe, is the one that allows him to sell things back Doom can sell items for 9% of their value, but his buyback costs are increased. Okay, so that's what I thought. So basically, before buyback was increased, buyback was increased by 15% before. Now it's 20. So his buyback is 5% more expensive with this bargain than it was before, which is actually crazy. Drow Ranger, when she hits you with marksmanship and it negates your armor and everything like that, it also gives a bonus amount of damage, of flat damage added on top. They buff that flat damage by 10 per level. So it just does more flat damage on top of everything else. And it's physical, the amount of damage that it gets added. When you have no armor, no base armor. So, I mean, it's definitely a buff. It's nice for farming as well as killing, so it's definitely going to make Drow more, cooler. Okay, so, Earthshaker, Slugger. No longer requires Enchant Totem to be leveled to be active. So that sounds like a buff, right? That means that you could start the game with Fissure and still have creeps, shoot off in the way that Slugger works. Here's the problem is the next change. Now scales with ult instead of Enchant Totem. That basically means that you won't have the higher levels of Slugger for a much longer amount of time. Because before, the kill knockback damage on creeps or heroes was relatively high, right? So it goes like 50, that's 80, that's 110, 140. You could get this by level 7. Like a really high amount of damage per the, based on the damage you're dealing. It just takes a lot longer to scale up to that. So it's a big nerf to Earthshaker in that regard. It's going to really hurt his laning phase, his mid-laning phase, meaning the, 5 minutes in. Ember Spirit got a nerf again. At level 1, Sleight is cheaper. Level 2, it's the same, but level 3 and 4, it's more expensive than it used to be, which is going to hurt his mana pool, and that's very much needed. Flame Guard deals 5 less damage at all levels, DPS. That matters a lot because obviously this is 18 seconds at max level, right? 18 seconds of 5 less. Anybody can't do math, that's 90 less damage over the course of the entire thing. That matters a lot. So it just means that Ember's going to have a harder time killing and farming, and mana will be a little bit more of a consideration. Enchantress, enchant if you use it on enemy creep. You bring it under your control and receive some of its XP bounty because you stole it. It was giving 50% of the experience from that creep. So the creep gives you 100 experience. She was getting 50 when she enchanted, just free. Now they lowered it to 35, meaning that it's harder for her to gain quick levels because she was getting too much experience. So that's a nerf. Hoodwink, Acorn Shot, every time it bounces on you, it gives a slow. The slow used to be 0.35 seconds, now it's 0.3, which means you're not slowed quite as long, so that's obviously a nerf to Hoodwink. I like these changes so far. Lich. Death Charge is his ability to get some of his mana back when stuff dies around him. Any unit dying within a range of Lich restores a percentage of his max mana. So basically, it was 1200 range, which wasn't very long. Now it's 1500, making Lich's mana not as much of a consideration. It's easier for him to get mana back now. I think this was probably needed. I think it's way too painful how Death Charge works. I know he can get mana that he would never get otherwise from he can't use Clarities. Sure. Doesn't have base mana. Sure. But obviously, when he's around a lot of dying things, his mana can gain suddenly very large amounts, things that wouldn't have existed before. I know there's an advantage to that, but it's mostly like a painful thing to exist as an innate. So it's nice now that they buffed the innate. And the talent for Sinister Gaze they nerfed, so it doesn't give as much duration that it used to, because it added to the duration of Sinister, so it's not as long. Lena got hurt really bad. So Combustion is her innate. Basically, when you take X amount of damage from Lena, they overheat and they do damage to nearby allies. So I think it's only from spells, if I remember correctly. I'm not 100% sure, but basically the threshold of how much damage she needs to do for it to activate increased by 25. So that means that it takes more damage for it to overheat. That's the problem. So it's a nerf in general, making it harder for her to activate the Combustion. Or since a single instance of damage can do multiple, it's less likely to do as many. So it's a nerf. Also, early game Light Strike Array is less stun. It has to scale back to what it was before. It doesn't reach the same until level 4, where it's identical. This is a change that a lot of heroes have been seeing, which is either a buff or a nerf on early game, but the same late. A lot of heroes have this in this patch. Lion. The cast range of Hex went up by 25 at all levels. This is really nice for Lion. Hex has a cast range that can be a little bit hard to get off. So getting a little bit of a buff to the cast range is going to help him tremendously. Also, the talent that reduces Hex's cooldown, which lowers it by 2, now lowers it by 2.5, which is actually a buff to the talent as well. Because his cooldown goes down to 12 seconds. Now with the talent, it used to go down to 14. Now it's going to go down to 13 and a half, which is going to help his rotation of spells a little bit better, right? So he's a little bit better of a disabler, and I think that really does matter. Magnus. Excuse me. Damage on Skewer increased by 5, 10, 15, 20. So Magnus is probably only going to skewer you a single time during a fight, obviously, if it hits you. So it's not a huge deal that it does more damage, but I don't think Magnus necessarily needed this either. Also, the talent that makes Shockwave slow longer now makes it slow even longer than that by 0.25 seconds, which is really aggravating for anybody who doesn't want to be slowed by Shockwave. So it's also a buff to a talent that probably wasn't being taken a lot, and power duration was probably almost always the pick, so it's nice to see them trying to make a different talent picked more. Marcy. When she rebounds off an ally, they move faster, but that duration they move faster for, which is a lot faster, by the way. 40% movement speed at max level. Lasts 1 less second, so they're not as fast as long. And it's probably needed because it was too fast. It's like a disperser. It's crazy. The talent that makes her ult give you movement speed got nerfed, so she doesn't get quite as much movement speed. It's percentage based, and they lowered it by 2. That's probably needed too. She was running too fast. One of Marcy's weaknesses should be that she has trouble initiating, and Furry's pretty upset about this change because it fucks him. But these changes, but in the same token, I think it's definitely needed. They're minor. Deluge, if I remember correctly, it sets your maximum movement speed to a certain number. It caps their movement speed, yes. So their movement speed was capped at 225 before, now it's capped at 240, which is faster. It means that Deluge, fair in Furry. It just means basically this ability was nerfed because you can still move a little bit faster than you were otherwise, which is good. Nature's Prophet. Triad's base attack time was increased, just so everybody knows. Base attack time is how long it takes to attack, and then your attack speed affects that number. Lower numbers are better. So a higher number means that these trees attack slower, not faster. I know it says increased. Everybody thinks increased means good. This is like increasing the cooldown or increasing something like that, right? So this is a nerf. These trees attack slower. Wrath of Nature also got its base damage decreased by 20, 15, 10 on the base damage. Now, obviously, the way that it works now is that it's base damage and then it adds damage off of that. But since the added damage is 10%, it now takes longer for it to matter. Because if you look at the max level, right, it's 10 less. So 10% was adding 19 damage, and then 10 on that, 10 on that, 10 on that, I believe. Now instead, it's only adding 18. That's only 1 damage. It's minor, but it does matter. It means not only does it do less base, but the stacking damage is less as well. Necrophos, base int increased by 1. I don't know why. He's an int hero, so that's 1 damage. It's mana regen. I don't get it. Ghost Shroud got buffed as well. The magic damage he takes when he turns Ghost, the extra magic damage he takes was 25%. Now it's only 20. So he doesn't take as much amplified damage from magic while he's ghosted. I don't get it. They just wanted to make Necrophos feel super strong. Ogre got a buff on the Bloodlust attack speed. I don't think he needed that. It's 5 at all levels, just 5 more attack speed. That makes him much better as a hero because in lane he can use it to try to last hit and deny, as well as in team fights. That's very big. Fire Shield, when it multicasts, now prioritizes Ogre, followed by heroes, then buildings, then creeps, and it skips any unit that already has the buff. That way it's not wasted. So it's more likely that a multicast on Fire Shield actually means something instead of just being wasted by ticking on people and refreshing cooldowns, basically. So that's more of a just a fix to the multicast. That doesn't really matter terribly, but the Bloodlust is a bigger change. Omniknight is ruined. Again. Aghanim Shard, the secondary purification, the effectiveness of the second hit on purification went from 75% to 65%, so it's a smaller heal. / nuke. Repel lasts 1 less second, which is a pretty big nerf. The hammer's damage got decreased at early levels, so it went down by 15, 10, 5, 0. So just much less damage as well. They swapped these 2 talents, so they kicked back the Guardian Angel duration and they buffed it. They kicked it back to which one? At 20 talent, and they kicked the Repel duration and kicked it down to 10. Here's the problem. Now at 10, you'll get the duration of Repel back to what it was before by taking a talent and ignoring the base damage talent, which affects Hammer. So to actually have Repel still be good, you specifically have to ignore the base damage that would help you with Hammer. So now you have to choose. Do you want to be a support? Sure, you get the same Repel that you should have had before. Otherwise, fuck you. You don't get all those abilities. Good. Pango, double jump facet, which allows him to basically shield crash, then shield crash again, and then land. The max damage increase for the second jump and the barrier increase went down by 10%. So those are nerfs, basically on the effectiveness of the second jump. So it basically just hurt the maxes by 10%. So it's a pretty big change. PL might be playable again. I don't take this facet, but they both increased the illusion damage by 2% at all levels for both facets, and I specifically care about this one. Spirit Lance's duration of the illusion went up at the early game, making it better in lane. And Phantom Rush now got fixed, so now the bonus agility is applied as soon as you start running, meaning you get the armor, essentially. That's the important part. You have the armor the moment you start rushing if you get hit or something. And then it lasts the 1.5 seconds at the end like it normally did. That was nice because before it didn't start until you actually got there. It would just have weird things. So that's just a consistency fix. So now if you get attacked while you're running, you'll have that armor from the agility, which is really nice. And obviously Spirit Lance is a minor change. It just helps the early game a bit. I'm much more worried about the 2% illusion damage. That's what was needed. Because the way they had changed some of the things around PL, it made him kind of unplayable. Now he might be okay. Primal Speed lost 5 movement speed. Good. He does have an ability that gets him more movement speed, which is Romp and Stomp. When he activates Trample, he gets 10% movement speed and allies get 5. So the fact that they took away 5 movement speed is needed because he was going too fast. Pugna, this is one of the worst changes in the entire patch. One of the worst changes. Okay, the enemy drain per second, which is basically how much damage he's doing to the enemy, went up by 10. Sorry, down by 10. Yeah, down by 10. So it's oh, cool. Like a nerf at the early game. Then it goes up by 10 at the mid-level. So it's what? And then the high level, it went up by 30. So it's not normally we talk about oh, it's a 5, 10, 15, 20 change. It's a 10, 20, 30 change, right? It's one of those paradigms. This doesn't fit any of them. It went down, then went huge up. Well, little up, then huge up. I've never really seen that. It's negative 10 plus 10 plus 30. That's so weird. So this 30 here, 320 going 350 per second, huge fucking deal. It's especially when it's amplified by Spell Amp. Pugna's going to hurt like a fucking bitch now. Ricky. He got an early game buff to the agility damage from Backstab. His innate. So it used to be 0.4, now it's 0.55, which means there's just more damage coming in. 0.8 goes to 0.9. So this is a 0.15, 0.1, which means it should be 0.05. And then it's the same. Yeah, 0.15, 0.1, 0.50. That's the change. That makes sense too, normal progression. So they just wanted to buff the early game a little bit and it scales back into what it was before, but it's better at every single level except the last level, which is 18, which is fair. It's just nice to let him farm a little bit earlier, be a little bit more like kill oriented earlier. Ringmaster got some changes. None of them are his agonyms or facets. Love that, right? Base movement speed nerfed by 5. That's fine. Bonus strength per Ringmaster level on Strongman Tonic, which is one of the Dark Carnival items, whatever they are. Got nerfed. So instead of 1.5 times his level, it's just 1 times his level. So it won't give nearly as much strength and it won't be as much of a heal either. His ult, the timer duration, which means basically when somebody gets hypnotized, it starts a timer before it blows up. The timer went down. It doesn't do that as long, by 0.25 seconds at all levels. And that's needed, because if you get hypnotized, it lasts the entire rest of the timer duration, regardless of how long that ends up being. It's annoying how long it is. The automatic explosion timer, which basically means when the ult will go away by itself, went down by 2 seconds as well, so now it's down to 6. That's also, obviously, a nerf, right? They're both nerfs. Good. Spotlight's linger duration, which basically means that if Spotlight hit you and then it went away, how long the debuff lasts on you, went from 0.1 to 0.3. It just means that like if it was revealing you or blinding you, it lasts a little bit longer. That's minor. So good. These are all remastered nerfs, but they're decent ones. I think they're all fair. They didn't target any of his base abilities, not counting ults, and I think they didn't need to. I think they're all alright, although Dagger feels kind of shitty, but I'm glad that this is the way they decided that he needed a little bit of a slapdown. Rubik, base damage decreased by 2. Good. It's harder for Rubik to farm now. Has to use Fade Bolt to farm, basically. Good. Sand King, base strength went down by 1. 1 less damage. Not as tanky. Good. His innate Caustic Finale, which is obviously when units die, they explode. The base damage was decreased by 5 per level. That's just because the max health is also part of the damage of the creep that dies, but now also that base damage that already existed got nerfed, so it's less likely to cause a chain reaction and blow everything up. Good. Shadow Demon, one of his facets makes it so that if an enemy gets hit with Disseminate, they lose a percentage of their health and regain half after the effect is lifted. So basically, this used to exist anyway in this ability, which was called something different back then. Basically, what you did is you cast something on all the enemies. They lost a percentage of their health flat, making them very squishy. Then they would gain most of that health back after the duration. So after 6 seconds or something, their health would come back. So it made it easier for someone to burst them. The facet, and already existed, just does that. But they thought it was too strong. So it used to just be 20% flat, which means that obviously you'd lose half, right? Because if it's 20% and only half of it comes back, you'd lose 10% of your health on the casting of Disseminate. Now it has to scale up to 20, so it takes longer for it to be that effective. Good. Shadow Shaman, the cooldown on Shackle was lowered at the early levels, so now it's much less. Instead of 16, it's such a 13. It just scales over there, so it's much stronger disabled. Silencer, agility gain decreased by 0.2. Base attack speed was increased by 10. And the early slow and arcane curse went up. So the early slow and arcane curse is very strong because you can chase better now. But that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about agility gain versus base attack speed. Now, does anybody watching understand how much agility gain you would have to lose before base attack speed is more valuable? A, you get the base attack speed right off the bat. So obviously, comparatively, that's one part of it. I hear Mars in the background doing stupid things. I don't want to hear anymore. That's part of it, but also it's how long it takes. So To talk about attack speed, you would have to lose 10 agility, because 10 agility is 10 attack speed to balance out. So let's talk about that first, before we get into what other things agility matters for, like armor and stuff. So, point 2. In 10 levels, point 2 will be 2. Which means by level 20, you will have lost 4. And by level 30 at the end, you will have lost 6. If you noticed, that means that Silencer will have more attack speed at every level. He will never go negative based on the agility gain. So this is a buff on attack speed at all levels. A. B, there is the small nerf included there. That's the fact that over the course of the game, he will lose an armor. I think he'll lose exactly 1 armor at some point, wherever that... It depends on what your current agility is, but at some point, he'll hit a break-even point for an armor being lost, because 6 agility across a game is an armor, basically, but it depends on how much agility you have at that moment, of whether or not the change affects you now, and then won't affect you, then affects you later. It depends on what the break-even point is for the agility, the armor to counter or not. So, basically... he's a little squishier depending on what the comparative agility is, but his attack speed went up. But obviously over time he lost some attack speed later, so it's not quite 10 attack speed. Like at level 20, it's not going to be quite 10, but it'll be some, maybe 6 or something. So it's not that big of a deal, but it's still really fucking annoying. So buff to Silencer. Spectre got a Spectral Dagger, costs 10 less at all levels. That's good because Spectre struggles with mana. Sven, the duration of Warcry got decreased by 2 seconds. They've been trying to nerf Warcry literally every single fucking patch. It just means the armor and movement speed don't last as long. So they're going to nerf it again, I'm sure. Tinker finally got the nerfs he probably needs. Mid-Tinker was becoming a thing again. Base mana regen was decreased by 0.25. Now, this only matters for lane, because obviously he can go back to base whenever he wants once he gets high enough level. So this is just an early game annoyance. The status resistance was rescaled on Defense Matrix. It starts higher. That sounds good, right? Instead of 10, it's 15. Like, oh, what a godsend. Then it's the same, and then it's down by 5, then it's down by 10. So, that's painful. Late game, he doesn't get the same amount of status resistance and can't apply to allies as well, right? They just will not have the same amount of like getting out of stuns. The cast range is also always its minimum. So instead of scaling up, nope, it's always 700, which is going to hurt Tinker because he might have to go out of position to help someone. Also, Defense Matrix had the damage barrier, because obviously it blocks a certain amount of damage. There's a talent that increases it by 125. They nerfed that to 75, so it had 50 nerf at that level, if that's what you're going to go for. I don't know if people will, but if you did. So good. Very big nerfs, and I love it. Wind Ranger. Base agility decreased by 2. That means she loses 2 attack speed, and I believe roughly 1 damage depending on the moment to moment, because she is a universal hero. Also, that means 1/3 of an armor, so again, the same thing with Silencer. It'll flood over or not, depending on how much agility she had currently. She might lose an armor. The talent that lowers Windrun's cooldown was nerfed from 2.5 to 2 seconds. That means that obviously Windrun, which is a cooldown of 12 seconds maximum, minimum, the lowest cooldown it'll ever be. It used to be 12 to 9.5. Now it's just, yes. Now instead of 9.5, it's going to be 10. So it's a nerf, obviously. Which matters, because Windrun matters a lot when you get Ags. And a talent for Focus Fire damage penalty being hit. So Focus Fire, just so you know,
With the wind at my back.
trying to see, okay, there we go. It makes you take a damage reduction. It's 30% damage reduction, even on Whirlwind, I believe. Yeah, 30% on both, right? It's 30% damage reduction, which seems very sad. This talent kind of negated some of it. It was bringing you down to, instead of 30, it was 18. Now it's 20. So obviously that means that a Wind Ranger who's using this talent does 2% less damage now, right? That's a 2% nerf, which is a big nerf to her overall effectiveness. I think this is a big hit to Wind Ranger. Winter Wyvern. I don't even know what this does. If you heal, you also restore mana. It doesn't say on just her. Well, yeah, I think it's a her. It just says in general. Okay. So that just means that whenever Winter Wyvern heals themselves or somebody else, they get even more mana than they would have otherwise. Okay. Zeus, big change. Buff on lightning bolts of 15, 20, 25, 30. That's a lot. Considering that you can lightning bolt every like 6 seconds. Yeah, 6 seconds. So each one of those lightning bolts is just bigger now, right? Not crazy, but it matters. It certainly do with Spell Lamp and stuff. And Nimbus costs 50 less mana. And since Zeus has a lot of mana problems conceptually, that's really fucking nice. It's really fucking nice to the overall cycle of... Yes, he does. The overall cycle of spells. It just means he can cast more spells, and that lightning bolt hitting harder is such a big deal because it's more likely to kill a support if they've already been somewhat softened up, right? Just that BAM! It depends on, obviously, the values and magic resistance and all that stuff. So, I'll do a quick summary before I get off. I'll be coming back on in about an hour to play. I think item-wise, we're just going to see no items are going to be bought more or less, most likely, other than Soul Crest, which might be bought less. It's going to be a nerf to these items, so they're just not as good. So when heroes do have them anyway, they just won't be as strong as they were. This is just a whatever. Does it? Does Nimbus just do lightning bolt damage? Oh! Shit. I didn't realize that. That's big. Okay. Nimbus does lightning bolts damage, which means that a Nimbus can do that extra damage as well. So hit every 2.5 seconds. Hit. Which means it's going to push waves better, kill heroes more likely. A lot of cool stuff. Okay, that's good. Sorry. Items going to be the same, like I said. AA is just a bigger counter to lifesteal now. Nothing changed about it, just better at it. I don't think this is going to change Anti-Mage win rate very much. Arc Warden's 2 damage might actually make Arc Warden much more playable because obviously it helps his laning a lot, let alone his pushing and his fighting and everything like that. Bane is just a much more palatable support now because that's a big deal. None of that matters. None of that matters. Drow might be played a little bit more because now she can farm faster and more likely to kill you. Earthshaker, they ruined Slugger, which might hurt core Earthshaker. Minor. Lena does less bullying in lane, which is definitely going to hurt her. Lion's going to find his combos easier, making him a more palatable support. Honestly, minor. Necropho's going to be tankier. Fucking douche. Ogre has more attack speed, which seems kind of important depending on the heroes that he's with. Omniac's been ruined. I swear to fucking God, he's been ruined again. Minor. PL might be playable again, but I'm not convinced. Minor. Pugna's life drain at level 3 means he'll never die. Minor. They nerfed Will of Wonder for Ringmaster. Minor. Still minor. Silencer's gonna be the most annoying fucking hero in lane now because of the fucking attack speed and slow. Minor. Ruin Tinker. Minor. Zeus is strong. That's how I would summarize everything and just what's important and what's not. Obviously, we're going to have to see what happens with win rate and all this other stuff, but at the very least, for right now, I'm going to leave you guys with that. I'll be playing later if anybody's going to watch me on Twitch or wait for my YouTube video to post tonight. I appreciate you guys for watching. I'll see you all next time.